Erling Haaland flopped while Mo Salah goes big. Game week 10 was a huge swing for a lot of managers out there. And in today's Game week 11 transfer plans video, I'm going to be discussing exactly what I'm doing off the back of my Game week 10 wildcard. So as always, look forward to today's video. Make sure you drop a like and of course, smash that subscribe button. Enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So first up, a quick recap on how Game Week 10 went, because for me, it was a big week with my wildcard active. If you checked out my previous videos last week, you will know that I was umming and ahhing between a lot of decisions, but I ended up landing on this team. And so far, it has proved to be 43 points, a green arrow from 1.2 million to basically 1 million in the world, with two players still to play in the shape of Mbeumo away against Fulham and Raul Jimenez at home against Brentford. So just take a look at the team from top to bottom right now. Ended up going for Sells in goal. Long term, the fixtures are quite difficult for Nottingham Forest, but I wanted to get a goalkeeper from a team that's actually been performing from a defensive perspective. And we saw that once again against West Ham. Couple of good fixtures coming up for them. Long term, I still think he is the goalkeeper to go for, and I'm happy to have him in. Of course, Fabianski played once again for West Ham. The problem, West Ham are terrible defensively. So even if I want to bring in Fabianski in a certain week, I still back the Nottingham Forest defence basically against any team in the league, as opposed to starting Fabianski. So really happy to land on Sells with that 6-pointer. Moving into defence, can't really be said much about this back three. Aït-Nouri was always going to be a lock in that Game Week 10 wildcard. We'll touch on him in a bit going into Game Week 11 and beyond. Some good opportunities in that game, but we need to remember Wolves are at the foot of the table for a reason. Still defensively very suspect. And we're not bringing in Aït-Nouri for those clean sheets. We are basically bringing him in for those potential attack and returns. And I still think with the fixtures coming up, he can deliver that. So a 1-pointer for Aït-Nouri. Disappointing, but he was always going to be in this Game Week 10 wildcard team. Another player was going to be Trent. Now, I didn't want to go to Arsenal early doors because the fixtures were difficult away from home. So I felt like Trent was a good placeholder in this team. But it was disappointing against Brighton. They definitely targeted him with Mitoma, and I think that could continue in future fixtures. But I still think Trent does offer value. I think there are good fixtures in the next two for him, and I'm still planning to keep him for the foreseeable future, and then we will look to use him as a bit of a cash cow later down the line. But I will touch on that later on in the video. Now, the big wildcard pick in this team was going to be Diogo Dalot. I had Rico Lewis until about half an hour before the deadline, until we saw the news that Kyle Walker was travelling with Man City. I had no idea that he was going to start instead of Rico Lewis, but it felt like an inevitable move that was going to be needed later down the line. So I thought I'd take the punt on Diogo Dalot. It looked great up until the Caicedo volley, but as a Chelsea fan, I can't lie, I was delighted that that goal went in. So a 1-pointer for Diogo Dalot. He was always going to be a punt, but we'll take a look at the fixtures coming up. I still think there is some value in there. But of course, with the new manager coming in, Amorim, it is a huge risk going for any sort of Man United player. So if you go for one, might as well go for two. Hence why Garnacho is in my team. Now, I really wanted to squeeze Bruno Fernandes. From day one, ever since we got the news from Ten Hag being sacked, I was compelled to bring in some Man United attacker because I felt like this Man United team had something to give in the final third. And they did give Chelsea problems because Chelsea defensively have been pretty woeful this season, even though they have picked up good results. Garnacho, we're going to take a look at the numbers in a minute. I felt like there was opportunities for him to cut back from Bruno Fernandes. But again, similar to Diogo Dalot, brought him in as a bit of a punt. And I am happy to have him from Game Week 11 with that brilliant fixture at home against Leicester. But that one definitely was a bit of a fail. Another one which felt a fail was going to be Son. Now, I was debating between Saka or Son. I felt like I wanted Son for the next two fixtures. Grabbed the assist. I felt like this was his moment, and then got substituted in the 55th minute, which is a slight concern. Now, I see a lot of managers actually panicking about Son coming up into Game Week 11. Of course, the Ipswich home game, I brought him in my wildcard team as a captaincy pick. A lot of people worried. Yes, they are playing midweek, but I think Son is still a brilliant option for Game Week 11. So no panic stations right now, and I'll show you later on in the video what I plan on doing with him. as we progress. Salah with the 18-pointer was always going to come into this wildcard team once I decided to go with that Erling Haaland. Delighted with that return, and he just looks bang on it right now. And there are rumours that he won't be travelling with Egypt on the international break, which is only an added bonus for those managers that are looking at him for game week 12 captaincy. Finally, Mbeumo, as I spoke about, still to play. Hopefully we get some returns there. And Cole Palmer, yes, he blanked, but still picked up a bonus point, showing what unbelievable value he is still providing at his price point. It just feels like if he's going to get an assist or a goal, he's going to be in the bonus points, and he's a long-term player for our teams. Finally, the front three, well, the front two in this case, ended up landing on Cunha. This was always going to be the case, and it felt like he could have had even more in that game, so he is still a great pickup. Strand Larsen, of course, getting the goal, but I still think if you had the money available, Cunha was the man to go to. Raul Jimenez, of course, still to play at home against Brentford. And the bench, Visser could be the one to punish me in tonight's game, but it is what it is. So 43 points, content. I'm pretty content with the performance. Solanke and Bruno Fernandes really being the ones that have kind of dented my overall rank, because prior to that, it looked good. And of course, I was hedging myself a little bit on the other Man United players. But all in all, pretty happy with the performance. A goal from Raul Jimenez, a goal from Mbeumo takes me into the top 1 million, and that will be a successful game week. Let me know the points you got. Let's take a look at some of the performers of game week 10 to see who really did stand out and the players that we might need to target for our teams. So taking a look at the standout performers for game week 10, I basically have only looked at the players that have played significant minutes, because people like Jordan Ayew are on this list, but nobody's going to be bringing him in who only played 4 minutes for them. So we're only focusing on those players that are actually FPL options. And of course, this is just game week 10 in isolation. So in terms of expected FPL points, you can see there Bruno Fernandes at 13.2, delivering 10 FPL points. Anybody that watched that game, Bruno Fernandes was at the heart of everything good in that Man United team. If anybody that brought him in at 8.2 million, I think he could be fantastic, especially for this Leicester game coming up. 4 shots, 4 attempted assists. Yes, he did have a penalty, which has slightly skewed the underlying numbers. His XG was 1.23. We basically deduct about 0.72 off that, still putting up good numbers, and his expected assists also fantastic at 0.62. So Bruno Fernandes is definitely on the cards, especially with Leicester at home and the next few fixtures. If you want to go there, I can't put anybody off, apart from, of course, the impending appointment of Amorim. What is that going to do for the positioning of Bruno Fernandes? Semenyo as well. We spoke about him not really being an option until around game week 12 when the Bournemouth fixtures do swing. But the underlying numbers continue to be brilliant. 4 shots, 1.14 expected goals. And again, really putting up fantastic numbers all round. 3 attempted assists. I wouldn't really be looking to bring in Semenyo as of right now, but I really do think as a budget enabler, if you wanted to go for Semenyo and maybe a Morgan Rogers, that is a great 2 to rotate each and every game week, because you can see here, Morgan Rogers only playing 69 minutes, really up against it at times for that game against Spurs, but still 2 shots, 0.69 expected goals, 0.46 expected assists. Villa's fixtures turned great from game week 12 onwards. I think Rogers and Semenyo are long-term picks for our teams. And maybe those managers that have a premium midfield are then looking to downgrade one of those. I think either are fantastic. The one thing I would consider is Aston Villa with the Champions League could be a little bit of fatigue or rotation at times in those league games during the Christmas period. The big one we need to talk about, of course, is Solanke. Now, a lot of people were looking to sell him. We spoke about this on this channel. You do not sell Solanke with Villa at home and Ipswich at home. So hopefully you did stick to that. But looking at the numbers right now, 5 shots, finally getting the shot volume that he hasn't been putting up in the last few weeks. 3 of those on target, 1.18 expected goals. The big thing for me, 0 expected assists. This is good. This is really good, because we speak about Solanke being a great all-round asset, but end of the day, we weren't really seeing him being a goal threat in that team. We saw that against Aston Villa, and with Ipswich at home in game week 11, another fantastic option for managers out there. The one thing I would say is, would I be rushing to buy Solanke? Probably not, unless you are really looking at a 1 game week punt to then wildcard in game week 12, because the fixtures are still difficult, and I would struggle to have the argument of going for Solanke over someone like a Nicholas Jackson longer term. But if you have Solanke, of course you're keeping him for 1 final game week. Few others I want to touch on quickly. Erling Haaland, once again, really unlucky for those that did have him and captained him. 6 shots, 1.44 expected goals. If you went without him like myself, we can count ourselves lucky once again. The haul is coming. It is coming at some point, whether it be in game week 11, game week 12. It's only a matter of time until Erling Haaland does deliver. So for those that still have him, I wouldn't be panicking. Even in this Man City team that are struggling to get going, he is still putting up fantastic numbers. Finally, Strand Larsen, even though he was the goal scorer, 0.7 XG, his underlying numbers weren't phenomenal outside of that. Only 2 shots, but 2 of those on target. And anybody that wants a cheap alternative, he is a great option if you cannot afford Cunha. And Mo Salah, finally, putting up the numbers here. Not fantastic. I'm going to be honest with you. When you compare Mo Salah to Haaland, very lucky that managers did get the haul that they got. 0.44 XG, 3 shots, 2 of those on target. Very much a week where, on another day, Haaland's the one that gets the big return and Mo Salah just ticks over with a steady 2-3 pointer. So count yourselves unlucky Haaland owners, Salah owners, still a great day at the office. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Who are you targeting for your Game Week 11 teams? Let's take a look at my team going into this weekend. So take a look at my team going into Game Week 11 and my transfer plans. Of course, after wildcarding in Game Week 10, always the plan traditionally is, can you roll your transfer in the following game week? So just take a look at it. I've got 1 free transfer, 0.6 million in the bank. Sells at home against Newcastle. Yes, I have got Fabianski at home against Everton, which is absolutely a consideration for goalkeeper, but I think Newcastle away from home are a different beast to that at home. And this Forest defence right now are fantastic. So I have no consideration to start Fabianski over Sells. I still would play Sells in this situation. And I'm really happy, as I mentioned, to have him. Even in the tricky games, I still think Forest can put up a resolute performance. Now take a look at the back 3 right now. Surely there is going to be an attack and return in this 3, or at least a clean sheet. Aït-Nouri at home against Southampton. Didn't get his yellow card in game week 10, so he isn't suspended for this game, which is brilliant. And hopefully we can get a double-digit return from Aït-Nouri. I do think a lot of managers that don't own him are probably panicking right now, thinking that this could be the fixture where he gets that monster haul. I, of course, I'm a little bit less bullish on that, but I still think he is a great pick. Diego Dallo at home against Leicester, the last game under Van Nistelrooy. Now, it's worth noting, I actually think Man United weren't too bad defensively against Chelsea. We've seen Chelsea do a lot more damage against teams in previous weeks. So coming up against Leicester, yes, Man United have their crazy moments, but I'm actually quite content with having Dallo for that game. I don't see any chance of rotation. I didn't see him get forward as much as I wanted to. We've seen him at times, like we saw against West Ham, doing that huge overlap that he does do. We might see that more in games where they dominate possession against Leicester, and I'm really happy to have him as a bit of a differential in this game week. And finally, Trent at home against Villa. Now, of course, we got Champions League this week, so we need to monitor the minutes of people. Could we see Connor Bradley play? Maybe, but I'm still happy with Trent in the team. No chance of me really looking to sell him at home against Villa, especially after they shipped 4 goals against Spurs. I think that's a good fixture for Liverpool. And Villa, after Champions League games, have historically this season been struggling the following game week. So I still think that's a good fixture for Liverpool in general. Take a look at the midfielders, and this is hopefully some monster hauls. And Mbeumo at home against Bournemouth is a brilliant fixture, and I don't even think he's more than 50% owned at the rank that I'm at right now. So I'm hoping he still remains a player around 50%, but I could see those numbers creep up as we progress towards those brilliant fixtures. Cole Palmer at home against Arsenal. Arsenal right now, a little bit struggling, but the underlying numbers are still good for them. I think this is going to be a close affair. I think Cole Palmer in any game can deliver. Not a captaincy option, probably not even a vice captaincy option, but this guy is in for the long term, because game week 12 onwards is when these Chelsea fixtures are absolutely ridiculous. And I do think we could see some monster hauls from Cole Palmer beyond that point. Next 3, Garnacho at home against Leicester is the big one. This is the reason why I brought him in. Chelsea at home was the added bonus. This is the fixture where I'm hoping we can get some differential returns. I don't think anybody's going to go there right now because, of course, some hesitancy about what happens with Amorim. While I'm on him, he is starting at home against Leicester. Now the 2 premiums left. Mo Salah at home against Villa and Son at home against Ipswich. Currently the captaincy on Son, the vice captaincy on Mo Salah, but that could very easily switch between the 2. Son was always coming into my wildcard team with a view of captaining him in game week 11 as the ultimate differential captain, and I'm still very much behind that. As I spoke about, a lot of managers worried about his minutes in game week 10. We saw Ange come out and say whatever the status of the game was, he was coming off on the 55th minute. Now, some people are concerned that obviously he isn't match fit, and I get it, but I don't think that means that he is then going to get 60 minutes against Ipswich. I think he probably gets between 70 to 80 minutes against Ipswich is my own perspective. And if that is the case at home against Ipswich, I think that still puts him very much alongside Mo Salah as a captaincy pick. But of course, we need to see what happens during midweek. Liverpool in the Champions League, Spurs in the Conference League. Anything could happen over that period. Son could play significant minutes, then I panic. Mo Salah could play significant minutes, pick up an injury. That changes the whole narrative. Right now, captaincy on Son is my differential captain to really try and chase some rank. Mo Salah, of course, is going nowhere in this team. Finally, the front two, and I still think the cheap forwards are offering brilliant value. Cunha at home against Southampton is fantastic. Really happy to have him in that game. And then we got Vissa at home against Bournemouth. I felt like Vissa and Raul Jimenez rotated really well because we got Raul on the bench away against Crystal Palace. I think he could do well, but I think Vissa's home game is the perfect opportunity to bring him in. Don't have Chris Wood, probably an error on my hand in terms of the wildcard team, but more than happy with this front two here. So as you can tell, no real standout players that need taken out of this team. Of course, anything could happen midweek. Palmer doesn't play, so he obviously is going to be okay. The big ones is, are there going to be any injuries to Trent, Salah and Son? And if there isn't, I think going into game week 11, it only makes sense for me to roll my transfer and accumulate some in the bank for me then to make some moves from game week 12 onwards. So rolling the transfer is my plan, but I want to quickly show you what my plans are from game week 12 and beyond. So taking a look at some long-term plans for my FPL team. As you can see here, game week 11 is pretty much locked in. I'm more than content with this team. And as we've spoken about, 0.6 million in the bank. So when we come into game week 12, once again, I think the team looks pretty decent, but a lot of away games for some big players. You can see here, Sells away against Arsenal, not ideal, but again, I still back Forest to do okay in games. So would I be surprised if they put up a resolute performance against Arsenal? Probably not. But as you can see, the defence, away games galore. 8-0 away against Fulham, not ideal. And I do have Anderson at home on my bench that could easily come in for 8-0, but I do back the upside that 8-0 does possess. Dallow away against Ipswich, again, not ideal, but first game, obviously in charge for Amorim. We will see what happens in that game week. And then Trent away against Southampton, possibly the last game in my team. But of course, between game week 11 and game week 12 is the international break, so anything can happen over this period. In terms of the midfielders, Son away against Man City might not actually be a terrible fixture for him, but we will touch on in a minute how he could be a cash cow in my team. The rest of the midfield are planning to be in place for game week 12. And Mbeumo is a long-term pick. Palmer's a long-term pick. There's no world where I sell Mo Salah away against Southampton and Garnacho away against Ipswich. Unless we see some problems with Amorim and maybe suggest Garnacho isn't part of his plans, he is going to stay in. There's still a bit of a punt in this team. And the front two, Cunha away against Fulham and Raul at home against Wolves. But I could easily play Vissa if I wanted to in this team. So game week 12, when we take a look at the fixtures that I don't have any ownership in, very tough to own Aston Villa. I don't really like the idea of downgrading anyone on my team to a cheap enabler like Rodgers. I think I'm just going to have to accept it. So really, the only players I'm a little bit concerned about not owning is Semenyo at Bournemouth and not having an Arsenal player. Now, Forest at home is a tough game, and I don't think necessarily rushing to bring in Saka that week is desperate. However, if I am panicking about maybe Saka and his opportunity in that game, an easy move for me to do is selling Son for Saka, knowing that that is going to be a long-term play in my team. And it would look something like this with one of those free transfers made. Probably will make that move, knowing that it is going to be a placeholder for my team. Then coming into game week 13, the fixtures start to swing a bit more. Of course, this is the big week where Man City play against Liverpool. And as of right now, I probably feel more content having the Liverpool players as opposed to the Man City players because, of course, them playing at Anfield. And I do think this team remains quite strong. Vissa rotates really well with Raul Jimenez, as I spoke about, so he would come in for that fixture. I think the defence looks good. Sells at home against Ipswich. Midfield looks fantastic. And I still think Mo Salah can be a great hold for that game week. then we got the front two in that game. When we take a look at the fixtures that I actually don't have any ownership in, again, it comes down to I don't have any Bournemouth away against Wolves, but again, I'm not that desperate for that specific game week. I've got some Man United differentials if it was to come to fruition. I don't have any Spurs, but I think a lot of people will be without Spurs on that game week. Some probably will even sell Solanke before that period. So I feel like I have the fixtures that I really want for game week 13. Finally, take a look at game week 14. Again, this is so far in the future, anything can happen. If we were to have Fabianski start, then of course he would come in for that game. Obviously, I would look to start probably Anderson instead of Diego Dallo in that fixture. But if Diego Dallo is all of a sudden a bombing wing-back, then he probably would stay in my team. And Raul Jimenez probably would come in for Garnacho. Now again, I think that team looks absolutely fine. But take a look at the fixtures where I don't have the ownership. Watkins at home against Brentford, not ideal, but remember, lots of fixtures during this period where it's Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday. I'll be a little bit concerned about who plays for Aston Villa in those games. Already have the Chelsea ownership, but no Nicholas Jackson, but I still think the three that I have offer great value. So all in all, I think over the future game weeks, I can get myself in a situation where I sell Son to Saka as a bit of a placeholder and then keep this team long term, knowing that I can pivot to whatever direction I want to. I could take the money out of Trent, put it into the forwards if I want to. I could take the money out of Salah at any moment and change that to a cheap midfielder to upgrade to Erling Haaland at the front line. Lots of options, but I'm happy with the team. Fingers crossed we get those returns from Raul tonight. Yes, guys, okay, that's going to wrap up today's Game Week 11 transfer plans video. As I spoke about, I am pretty content with my team unless anything happens during the midweek with the Champions League and Europa League. So we will wait and see until then. But usually off the back of a wildcard, you do look to roll the transfer. And I'm hoping we do get some returns from both Mbeumo and Raul Jimenez tonight. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please do consider dropping a like and smashing that subscribe button. Any questions, pop them in the comments section and I will see you in tomorrow's video. Take care. Cheers.